Hello, everyone. A very logical month to all of you now. See, February is started. So, the first day of February. So, a happy February to all of you, a logical February to all of you. And the first session, first day, first editorial of the Indian Express. Let's start. So, reasoned optimism, yes, there should be optimism everywhere around us. And this is a reasoned optimism. That means it is not just an idealistic one, there's a reason behind it. Or thoda sa सोच समझ के cautiously we are being optimistic. That is the meaning here. So let's see, we are coming up with the reading of the first editorial of the Indian Express. Then we'll be coming up with the main idea discussion. And then, of course, we'll do the vocabulary that we have today in this article. We have quite many good words, as you can just see on the screen, the bold words, right? So, the Economic Survey 22-23. I hope you will be seeing the budget also and you'll be reading about the budget also. So, let's see the budget that is based on this economic survey. The annual flagship document of the Ministry of Finance is carefully optimistic in its assessment of the prospects of the Indian economy over the coming years. See, if the heading was reasoned optimism, so you can understand this by carefully optimistic, right? Now, the optimism is striking, particularly when the global situation isn't exactly rosy. It isn't exactly rosy means not very positive, and therefore, the optimism that the economic survey is displaying is a very careful one. With tightening financial conditions and subdued trade growth, this is the reason why the global situation is not exactly rosy. Now, the survey has projected the Indian economy to grow at 6.5% in 23-24, a tad lower than the forecast of 7% for the ongoing financial year. A tad lower, मैंने bold में लिखा है. You can see that the forecast was for 7% and this is for 6.5%. मतलब इतना difference नहीं है. A tad lower means a slight difference for the ongoing financial year. Now, this assessment is at odds with the more pessimistic forecast by international agencies and other independent evaluations. In its latest World Economic Outlook released on Tuesday, the IMF has pegged India's economic growth to slow down from 6.8% in 22 to 6.1% in 2023. On similar lines, rating agency CRISIL has projected growth at 6%, while investment house Nomura has pegged it even lower. While the survey's projections of the decline in growth may not necessarily be incorporated in the union budget, they nonetheless provide an insight into the government's views on the state of the economy. So, if we see what is being given in the what is given in the first passage, first paragraph is one, that it is carefully optimistic. The economic survey is carefully optimistic. एक point हो गया. Now, this optimism is striking. It is in conflict. It is at odds with what? With the pessimism that is shown by the other international agencies. ठीक है, यहाँ पे वो conflicting है, contradictory है, opposite है. तो economic survey जो हमारा है, that is being a little optimistic, and the other agencies which rate our country's economy are pessimistic about our economic growth. Example, WEO and CRISIL. IMF has said this, right? So these two parts, these two become examples to show that the economic growth is not very good, whereas the first part of the paragraph shows that, see, we are carefully optimistic about it, according to the economic survey, right? So this was what is given by the author. So not his opinion about anything, but this is what was projected. Now, the survey's growth prognosis is based on expectations of robust domestic demand and a pickup in capital expenditure. Now, the author says that, see, why is the economic survey a little optimistic? Because the prognosis का मतलब होता है फ्यूचर का सोचना, फोरकास्ट करना या प्रोजेक्ट करना कि आगे क्या होगा. तो किस पे बेस्ड है ये? It is based on expectations of robust domestic demand and a pickup in the capital expenditure. So these are the two things that need to be done or that will happen in the economy, and on this basis, the growth will be there. It notes that as export growth moderated in the ongoing financial year, domestic consumption rebounded, providing a fillip to the economic activity. Now, read very carefully how this cycle moves or how these situations lead from one to the other. उसने कहा कि ये जो सर्वे है, सर्वे में जो ग्रोथ उन्होंने बताया कि ये केयरफुली ऑप्टिमिस्टिक है. Now, this is based on what? On a robust domestic demand. So you can understand the meaning of robust. That means a strong domestic demand, right? And a pickup in the capital expenditure. ये दो चीजें होंगी तो हमारी इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ बहुत अच्छी होगी. लेकिन ये दो चीजें कब और कैसे होंगी? One another thing that it notes is export growth moderated. The export growth इतना ज्यादा नहीं हुआ था पिछले साल, तो वो थोड़ा सा moderate हुआ. जब वो moderate हुआ तो क्या increase हुआ? Domestic consumption rebounded. It came back, right? So now export growth decreased a little, domestic consumption increased a little, and therefore it provided a fillip to the economic activity. If the domestic growth is increasing, that means the economic activity is being pushed. So providing a fillip का मतलब होता है stimulus या pushing the economic activity. Then it comes with the word however. Now, however, this was largely due to the release of the pent up demand. पेंट अप एंगर होता है, मतलब एकदम अंदर पकड़ के रखना, कंस्ट्रेन करके रखना, कंटेन करके रखना और फिर एकदम से भड़क जाना. दैट इज द आउटरीच. सो द आउटरीच वाज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ द पेंट अप एंगर. सो इन दिस वे दिस पेंट अप, देयर वाज अ पेंट अप डिमांड और उसके बाद वो डोमेस्टिक कंजम्पशन रिबाउंड हुआ. दिस इज व्हाट ही इज सेइंग. नाउ व्हाइल द सर्वे एक्सपेक्ट्स दिस रिबाउंड टू हैव लास्टिंग पावर. तो रिबाउंड का मतलब होता है ये डोमेस्टिक कंजम्पशन इंक्रीज हुआ, वापस से आ गया और वो काफी समय तक चलेगा. लास्टिंग, लास्ट टू लास्ट, और द लास्टिंग पावर मीन्स इट इज गोइंग टू गो फॉर अ लॉन्ग पीरियड. टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट इट इज सस्टेनेबल? In the context of elevated inflation, eroding purchasing power, and an uneven recovery compacting sales of both consumer durables and non-durables is debatable. Now here, when you're reading also, focus on this small punctuation. ये जो dash है, ठीक है, ये जो dash के बीच में है, उसे अगर हम हटा देते हैं तो हमारा सेंटेंस बनता है कि सर्वे एक्सपेक्ट्स दिस रिबाउंड टू हैव लास्टिंग पावर. टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट इट इज, मतलब वो बनेगा या नहीं लास्टिंग पावर, वो डिमांड कंजम्पशन चलेगा या नहीं ज्यादा समय तक, दैट इज डिबेटेबल. सो दिस इज योर मेजर सेंटेंस, राइट? सो वेदर इट इज, टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट इट इज सस्टेनेबल इज डिबेटेबल, वेदर इट विल बी और इट विल नॉट बी, तो ये डिबेट होता है. बीच में जो लिखा है दैट इज ओनली द रीजन दैट इज बीइंग गिवन ऑफ व्हाई इट इज डिबेटेबल. सो दीज two and a half or three lines are the reasoning of why, whether this consumption is going to be a lasting power or no. Now, on investment activity, the survey highlights the increasing trend in project announcements and private capex spending. While there are some signs of an uptake in the private investment cycle, these indicate a skew in favor of specific sectors. Skew का मतलब होता है थोड़ा सा slant पे चले जाना, थोड़ा सा distort कर देना उसको. So not a broad-based pickup. Now see, what the paragraph is about is, it talks about this domestic demand and a pickup in capital expenditure. Domestic demand rebound हुआ था, डोमेस्टिक डिमांड काफी समय तक चलेगा, ये एक्सपेक्टेड है. चलेगा या नहीं, ये डिबेटेबल है. Second part it comes up with on investment activity. So that means the author the author is analyzing what that survey has based its careful optimism on two things. One, the domestic demand that should be strong. Second, the capital expenditure. For domestic demand, it comes up with this first part of the second paragraph. For the investment activity, it is saying here. And here also he shows that, see, there is a sign of uptick, थोड़ा सा increase होगा, लेकिन ये skewed भी है. कुछ specific sectors में ये टेढ़ा है, slant पे है. So it is not a broad-based pickup. This is what he's saying. Moreover, the continuing downturn in exports will have ramifications. उसने पहले ही कहा था कि export growth moderated था, ठीक है, moderated यानी कम होता गया, और अगर कम हुआ इसका मतलब downturn हुआ. डाउनटर्न हुआ तो दैट मीन्स एक्सपोर्ट्स आर गोइंग टू रिड्यूस मोर, and if they are going to reduce more or decline more, then definitely this is going to affect the economy, and this is going to have ramifications. And ramifications, what we have done in the previous editorial discussion also. So while the survey does acknowledge the prospects of sluggish growth exports, a detailed articulation on the risk to growth from a slowdown in the developed economies if interest rates remains higher for longer is absent. That means if this is growing declining and the prospect of sluggish exports, मतलब sluggish का मतलब भी यही हो गया वापस, slow exports हैं, कम हो रहे हैं, डिक्लाइन हो रहे हैं, तो इसके बाद एकदम से ग्रोथ होना ऐसा नहीं लगता है. So he is coming up with the positive and the negative, and rather he is analyzing these two factors on which the optimism of the economic survey has been based. I hope you have understood this much. Coming to the third para. The survey has devoted an entire chapter to India's medium term growth outlook. The broad conclusion is encouraging. The twin balance sheet crisis does not appear to be an impediment to growth anymore. If it is encouraging and it does not appear to be an impediment, हमें पता है impediment का मतलब क्या हो जाएगा. Both corporate and banking sector balance sheets are in far better shape and the credit cycle is poised for an uptick. Poised को poised से relate कर सकते हो, तो it is poised for an uptick. That means it is going to go up. So impediment would be obstruction. तो ऐसा कोई ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन है नहीं, तो ये इम्प्रूवमेंट में तो होने आने वाला है. द वाई? बिकॉज देर इज नो ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन टू ग्रोथ एनी मोर. द सर्वे emphatically states, very strongly states, the Indian economy is well placed to embark on a growth trajectory similar to what it experienced post 2003. जिस तरीके से हम 2003 के बाद ग्रो हुए थे, उसी तरीके से अभी भी we are going to embark on, means to set upon a growth trajectory. So it will be the path, the upward path. So we have this uptick, we have this trajectory word which shows us the path or the course similar to what it experienced post 2003. This is reassuring. Thus, while the short term outlook is challenging, favorable demographics, formalization, and digitization are reasons for optimism in the long run. So here we end the reading of the article. We have understood a few words. We have understood the central idea, what the economic survey was. It came up with the optimism, but this optimism was a very carefully stated one, right? Reasons for this optimism become two. It is based on the consumption increasing, which they expect would stay for a long time, sustain hoga. Second reason for that optimism was the economic activity brought about by the investment. ठीक है, ये दो reasons थे या ये दो base थे careful optimism के. Now then there was a question of whether this is going to work or no. So this was debatable. And then the author gives us the discussion of why and how this is debatable. So he comes up with the plus of the consumption. He also comes up with the minus of the consumption की demand बढ़ा पर कितना बढ़ेगा, क्या होगा. Economic activity है, investment है, तो क्या होगा. And then he talked about the exports, that exports are declining and how they are going to be revived. That is not the point. Further decline is going to create a problem. But the end was in the third paragraph where he says that, see, the twin balance sheets are quite promising. There is no hindrance there. It is reassuring that they are now posed or poised for an upward trend. यहाँ पे चला जाएगा, हमारी growth अच्छे अच्छे path पे चलेगी, and this is the optimism, and these are the reasons. The last sentence is the conclusion, the reasons for the optimism, and therefore the heading comes as a reasoned optimism, right? So he is giving us the logic behind it of optimism is there, so why and how much, and let's see the main ideas now. I hope you have understood this. So what we discussed, what I just gave in that figure. So carefully optimistic, ग्लोबल सिचुएशन इजंट एग्जैक्टली रोजी, तो ये कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में आ जाता है. मोर पेसिमिस्टिक फोरकास्ट विद इंटरनेशनल एजेंसीज, ये भी हमें समझना चाहिए था. प्रोवाइड एन इंसाइट इनटू गवर्नमेंट्स व्यूज, दिस बिकम्स द मेन पॉइंट ऑफ द फर्स्ट पैरा. Based on expectations of robust domestic demand, so this is one, and a pickup in the capital expenditure. These are the two things on which that optimistic economic survey is based on. To what extent it is sustainable? So this raised a question here. होगा या नहीं होगा? Durables and non-durables की वजह से था वो debatable है and not a broad-based pickup, so it is giving a little minus. So now he is coming up with both the sides of the coin. Last paragraph, it is encouraging. The twin balance sheet crisis does not appear to be an impediment to growth anymore. Indian economy is well placed to embark on a growth trajectory similar to what it experienced post 2003, and there are reasons for optimism in the long run. So short run में challenges हैं, long run में optimism है. So economic survey presents an upbeat assessment of economy. Upbeat हमारे पास we had the word uptick also, that means this. And here upbeat would mean optimistic. But there are more short-term challenges than it lets on. So in the long run, it is good. We are optimistic about it. In the short run, of course, we need to come up with the facing of those challenges. Clear? I hope so. Let's come to the vocabulary part now. Here, a few words are repetitive ones. That means we have done these words earlier in the maybe around 8 to 10 days back. फ्लैगशिप प्रोग्राम होते हैं, तो फ्लैगशिप था हमारे पास लीडिंग और द स्टार प्रोग्राम वट एवर इट इज. अ टैड वी डिस्कस्ड इट इन द पैराग्राफ ओनली, अ टैड लोअर हमने कहा था 7% पे है और 6.5%. तो लास्ट ईयर इट वाज 7% द टारगेट, and this year it is 6.5% as the target economic growth. So it is just a tad lower, just a bit. At odds with, we can understand, against या conflicting आ जाता है. Pegged is a word which you have done a few days back in the editorial only. Pegged is to be nailed, you can say, or fastened, or that means it is pegged at, it is stuck at. उसे define कर दिया गया है कि यही है तुम्हारा position. Prognosis हम समझ सकते हैं, अगर diagnosis word हमें आता है, right? So the doctor, we go with the symptoms of cold and cough or anything to the doctors. The patient goes and then it is diagnosed that he has severe cold or he has pneumonia or he has any other disease, right? Prognosis is how the disease is going to take shape in the near future. किसी को ब्लड कैंसर होता है तो उसे उसके सिम्टम्स देख के पता चलता है, टेस्ट करके पता चलता है कि ठीक है ऐसे ब्लड कैंसर है. अब ब्लड कैंसर की वजह से उसकी हालत क्या और कैसे होने वाली है इन द नियर फ्यूचर, दैट इज द प्रोग्नोसिस द डॉक्टर वुड गिव. सो प्रोग्नोसिस इज अ फोरकास्ट और प्रोजेक्शन. यहाँ पे इफ यू गो विद द रूट वर्ड ऑल्सो, प्रो का मीनिंग तो बहुत सारे होते हैं, बट प्रो हियर मीन्स द फ्यूचर, एंड नोज इज नॉलेज. NOS is knowledge. Then, providing a fillip, I had discussed the word fillip is stimulus, boost, or spur. It spurs. That means it pushes towards economic activity. तो वो stimulus हो जाता है. Pent up energy हो सकती है, pent up anger हो सकता है, तो something that is repressed, contained. Contained का मतलब होता है limit करना. Lasting power, last word is used for time. It's a time related word, everlasting. ठीक है, वैसे तो lasting power means it is permanent or it will go a long way, a long term. Uptick, of course, you can understand the word increase. ये up करके tick कर दो तो increase हो जाता है. Skew का मतलब होता है slant, इस तरीके से थोड़ा सा टेढ़ा. Ramifications we have done earlier, effects, upshots, consequences. Sluggish, lethargic, slothful, lackadaisical. ऐसे बहुत सारे वर्ड्स हैं जिसका I've taken this word in a discussion in the class also. I've given you at least 7 to 8 words related to the word sluggish. And if you talk about sluggish for a person, anything, it would be lazy. Simple सा word है lazy, otherwise lethargic, slothful. Impediment हमने कर लिया था, obstacle, barrier, obstruction. Poised को pose से relate करो तो you can understand how to be calm and composed. hold yourself together properly, dignified manner, ये dignity word आ जाता है, composure word आ जाता है, and then there's a good word for it, that is a sang-froid. Trajectory is a path. When you are reading about the missiles, when you're reading about the planes, or you're reading about the planets and all, satellites and all, तो उसका trajectory होता है, किस रास्ते पे किस तरीके से वो चलता है, तो वो कोर्स हो जाता है या पाथ होता है. इसी तरीके से हमारी ग्रोथ ट्रैजेक्टरी है, मतलब ग्रोथ पाथ हो जाएगा. कभी इंक्रीज होगा, कहीं डिक्रीज होगा, कहीं और इंक्रीज हो जाएगा. सो दिस बिकम्स अ ग्रोथ ट्रैजेक्टरी, राइट? So that's all for today. And I hope you are noting down these words. And when you find that these words are familiar, they sound familiar, kindly go back in your book, in your notebooks, flip the pages and see where you have written and what you have written. So you'll be able to remember. There is no need to learn. You'll be able to remember them on your own automatically. So thank you and stay logical. See you tomorrow.